You are listening to the Wi-Fi Ninjas podcast, where we talk about wireless technology. Here are your hosts, Mac Daring and Matt Starling.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Wi-Fi Ninjas podcast. Matt and Mac here, and today we are joined from Philipp from Contact.io. Hi Philipp.
Hi Matt, hi Maciej.
Hello. How is it going, Philipp?
Very well. I just managed to get the baby out of the door so that we don't have any COVID-related interruptions given to work from home. And now I'm very much looking forward to chat with you guys in the next hour and share a little bit what we do here at Contact.io and on what path we are on for now. I think, good 7-8 years.
Yeah, likewise, man. It's like we are so humbled and honored by your presence here. We are very grateful for you donating your time to speak with us and our listeners. So thank you very much for being here. And you're not alone with your young kids, running around wildly. I have my son, but I have done it differently. I have like a soundproof curtain in front of my room, and he is a magnetic, self-closing. So, I enter the room and it's like, it does like tick, 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 and it's closed. He can't open that yet. So, that makes me feel like more secure in my sacred studio space. Matthew, how are you?
Something I will ping you afterwards for best practices of that.
Okay.
Your stack is definitely more developed than mine here.
By the way, we are recording like the audio-video series of tests of microphones, cameras, acoustic treatment, and this, soundproofing stuff as well. That works and it's cheap and practical. But that's the conversation for an entirely different time. Matthew, how are you doing, my friend?
Very good, thank you. Philipp, how about you introduce yourself a little bit more to everyone so they can understand a little bit more about yourself and who you work for and what you do?
Great. So, long story short, Philipp von Gilsa, I'm the CEO of Contact.io. Contact.io is in the business of providing location and indoor IoT services to a variety of industries and different players within the ecosystem. We have been around for 8 years and consider ourselves, if you think in technology terms, right, one of the leader, if not the leader in Bluetooth-based connectivity. So we have, a couple of millions of devices in the field that help people to track, locate, and sense anything that relates to a space, a person, to things, and to mobile phones as well. I think when it comes to me personally, I'm spending most of my time between the US. I've been living in San Francisco for the last good 2 or 3 years, and the company engineering headquarters is in Europe, in Poland, and kind of our commercial presence and headquarters are in the US. And I'm going back and forth most of the time.
So quite a lot of travel then, I presume, for you, probably before COVID.
Yeah, so listen, I think for me, the year 2020 was an entirely new way of experiencing the business and running the company. And that has mainly due to the fact that traveling wasn't part of. But given that indoor IoT location, occupancy, and all these things, actually, how do we use our space relate pretty much to some of the dynamics that are now shifting due to COVID, we still have been able to grow more than 100% year over year if you compare it to 2019 in 2020, despite the fact that I wasn't able to travel. So I'm also very much questioning the correlation and causality between me pretending to be very busy and the actual business success.
Yeah, well, I suppose COVID's kind of driven the need more for the whole contact tracing and RTLS and, that indoor location tracking space, really.
Exactly. I think what we see is actually, I would say, a twofold effect. So maybe, taking a step back and sort of concluding the introduction of Contact.io, I've made it very technology centric in the first part. I think if we, focus a bit more on the value propositions and the verticals we're focusing on, then probably 60% of our business is in healthcare and the workspaces, like corporate real estate, and the remaining 40% is in anything that can touch, right, logistics, supply chain, retail, airports, like the variety of large spaces or distributed spaces where people are in the business of making a sense of location, occupancy, and sense of data. But given that we have that kind of, touching a lot of verticals, we have really seen that a couple of them have, reduced spending to zeros. Like think of airports, stadiums, public venues, like anything where people go. And then on the other hand side, anything that happens in the logistics, but also now in the office space, and in the healthcare has continued to increase. So net, I think the industry as a whole is at a picking point when it comes to growth.
Finally,
right? At least that's what we see. Purely looking at like the problems that we are facing right now versus 3 years ago.
Yeah, it has been a while since RTLS been accurate enough to be useful in certain situations, but we had some issues with adoption, and great job with making it more mainstream, guys. So as you mentioned, you are mostly a BLE provider of the technology in the RTLS space. So as far as we know, you provide tons of different tags in different form factors, and now you've expanded your portfolio with more, I don't know how to say that, more robust devices with more functionality, like Portal Beam and Portal, what was the call? Portal Lite, the small one. So I'm sure that we will talk more about these products, but it's not only true that you are dealing with the BLE, you are also in a space of computer vision a little bit, and IR. Is there something else when it comes to the underlying technologies that you guys leverage?
Yeah, so I think I'll explain our kind of company positioning around BLE, why we think it's like fundamental to the business and to our success. But if you purely think about technology and the verticals that I've just mentioned, at the end, to the end customer and the person trying to do something with that data, they don't really care how it's generated, right? If that's UWB, Wi-Fi, BLE, etc. But they need a certain level of accuracy and certainty in the information that is provided to them. And we are, from a Contact.io point of view, in the business of optimizing all the different ways and forms of the granularity of how you want to consume and take location data within buildings, and more specifically within the room as the logical entity that we think of. And when you think of the room as a logical entity, and then you derive back, okay, what are type of technologies that we now need to have in place in order to make sense out of that room, then you quickly notice that RF in itself, and I'm meaning here, right, may that be Bluetooth or maybe that be Wi-Fi, is just not sufficient because of all the pitfalls that come with RSSI based location computation. So that's why we have earlier this year, after a very long R&D cycle, I think launched one of the most innovative product offerings the entire industry has seen now for a long time, because the product that you've just mentioned, the Portal Beam, is essentially a device that runs on BLE connectivity. right? Like, so it communicates back to the cloud or to the access point infrastructure using the Bluetooth radio. But the device itself, next to a BLE a radio that can move into listening or in beaconing mode, has a camera, or more specifically a thermal camera array, which is privacy compliant. So you can actually put it into a patient room, or you can put it into an office, because we can't detect and see the faces of people, but we recognize the heat patterns of the space, and thus we can tell occupancy of people that are not wearing a mobile phone, that are not wearing a tag or a badge, or that have been marked, so to say. And next to that, it also carries an infrared array that, in combination with specific endpoints or tags that either we provide or any third party can provide, given that our architecture is open and that it's documented, and we don't believe in proprietary closed loop systems, but we think it's part of the adoption. It's not only about accuracy; it has been about cost, simplicity, openness, and all these good things that drive adoption. If you think in industries outside of RTLS or location have been missing, and we want to address them. Thus the device also carries an infrared array, which allows devices to pick up both BLE and infrared information. Infrared being kind of line of sight technology, and thus you can get very, very high certainty, essentially 100% certainty information on, is the device in the room when a portal beam is installed. And now we're already going kind of very deep into the topics, but I think when we think about location, and when we also think about our location engine, then we think of layers, right? We think of these different layers of information that can come from different technology, and now depending on the use case that you're consuming, you need, or it can make sense to combine these different layers of information and come to one deterministic output of, what is it that you want to know. And given that, our stack is essentially API first, we have moved from, doing and started doing a couple of years ago with BLE-based hardware. We have moved from a value proposition to an end-to-end solution provider, and we offer our customers two things: either an event-based API that allows them to consume not raw location data, not a location engine feed, but an event feed that we program to these specific use cases, or alternatively, kind of micro applications that allows a nurse to locate IV pumps, that allows a facility manager to understand meeting room occupancy, that allows a person from an IT department to manage inventory of their assets and adding that digital layer to it. And it's pretty much a 50-50 approach.
Because the first way I actually came across, I heard about Contact.io, was not actually around Portal Beam or your infrastructure you offer. It's more actually around the tags. So the tag side of things, and providing BLE tags, because we were looking into finding a partner that could provide tags to be able to tag assets, and Contact.io was the company that was recommended to us, and that's how I first came across you guys.
I'd say recommended multiple times.
Typically how most companies have initially come across, and it's funny because that's probably, even in terms of revenue, I mean, it continues to be an important part, but on the tech side, our entire stack is completely agnostic. So we have some of the biggest deployments that we are doing, we have done with not a single Contact.io device, right? Like being sold from Contact.io. And not even a single piece of Contact.io hardware being sold on the infrastructure layer, because we have started with the devices, and we have, more than 3 million BLE, beacons or tags, you name them, in the field right now. And those we have built, obviously, a software stack from the embedded to the cloud that supports high volume and a large number of customers. So roughly 3 years ago, we started a journey of saying, let's completely open that up. Let's open up the firmware SDK so that we can give it to anybody who wants to embed kind of what we have become very, very strong at, and allow them to, make their own devices smart and make them part of our kind of value proposition. Then we have done the same thing on the gateway layer, because I feel one of the largest and biggest barriers for technology scale-ups in this space is not just the difficulties with scaling in terms of cost and simplicity of the offering, but the infrastructure and the professional services that go hand in hand. If I have to go into a customer and install an overlay network, right, of adding different gateways or access points and then connect them again to the existing Wi-Fi, that has been, I think, one of the biggest shortcomings of the industry, where everybody is going in with their own stack and nobody is collaborating, right? So we've said essentially by the year 2022, 1 year to go, I don't want to sell a single gateway anymore. I want to be completely capable to rely on the existing infrastructure, which logically falls into two categories, either light or the Wi-Fi, or the enterprise, right? The networking stack. Those are the companies that are kind of getting into the business of saying, we want to be the infrastructure layer, right? And we've kind of made a lot of, bets and partnerships on the networking side, because it's RF and it comes very natural, and they all have BLE radios now. So if that can replace an overlay gateway infrastructure, then the total cost of ownership for the end customer, if it's a large bank or an hospital chain or you name it, is going to be significantly low, because it's just about adding devices and software on top, right?
So Philip, what is a gateway, just for any of our listeners that haven't?
Okay, yeah. So gateway is the typical Bluetooth terminology for a device that picks up Bluetooth signals and that sends them back to the network using a Wi-Fi. So it's a BLE Wi-Fi bridge. So what the UWB guys call an anchor, the typical, or like the contactor terminology is a gateway. Sort of just closing that thought, right? Our vision is OpenStack, software driven. You need to get rid of that overlaying network. And you need to start thinking, what if every single Wi-Fi access point has BLE capabilities already in place and we can use them? What are going to be the complementary infrastructure that you want to put in place in order to get more location, granularity, certainty, accuracy, and data from the spaces, right? But it's not a competing value, it's about complementing it. And this is where the Portal Beam has been designed for, as a unit, as a satellite, right? The space analogy here, like a satellite around the access points. You put it in each room. It's either power run or battery powered, lasts for 5 years, connects to the Wi-Fi infrastructure using BLE, and then provides.
It lasts for 5 years on battery.
Yes.
Wow.
With a camera
or you can just
and BLE
with a camera
and IR sensor and environmental sensors.
That is
O2 sensors and the entire humidity, particle filtering, everything. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And all of that because it's obviously running like a whole bunch of edge processing. So we are computing locally and then sending back using BLE, which is obviously very low power, and those don't have to tap into a Wi-Fi and ding. And given how the IoT radios and networks are currently being designed, that just makes it ultra scalable, because if you roll it out, you're not going to have these conversations around, what are the networking, what's the SSID, is this a secure thing? And then this whole long tail of adding IoT devices on the Wi-Fi network, which can consume an entire project manager, and is certainly a big bottleneck when it comes to let's just do something very quickly. You eliminate it and you just utilize the BLE stack.
Yeah, so let's stop here for a second to make sure that all the listeners they understand what we are talking about when it comes to your new offering, Portal Beam, which we also think is mind-blowing. So Portal Beam is a small device. It fits a palm of your hand. It can be battery operated with up to 5 years of battery life. It can be PoE powered as well. It's designed to complement the existing Wi-Fi/BLE infrastructure you have in place. So if you have some Cisco or Meraki or Mist or whatever, you can have that has both Wi-Fi and BLE, and it has some programmable capabilities in their access points that will allow your BLE-based devices like Portal Beam to use this BLE from a vendor already there to be used as a back-end data connectivity that will feed the information from your sensors back to your cloud using existing vendors' BLE back-end data capabilities. And also, let's say that you design your Wi-Fi network or Wi-Fi/BLE network for capacity in a carpeted office space. So you will have an AP per room or something like this. You'll just have a standard design, designing for high capacity or coverage or whatever your requirements might be. But typically, you don't see too much the RTLS designs there where you have tons of access points around that will allow you to use internal, in most cases, omnidirectional BLE radios to be used for trilateration using BLE RSSI to locate the assets. You don't have that. You have just APs in a room, like one in the center or something, that will not allow you to locate your assets quite accurately if you wanted to. And that extrapolates to the room level. Even that is not guaranteed with your existing infrastructure. So what you guys are trying to do is not to compete with that, but just to add a sensor per room, let's say, that is cheap and cheerful and beautiful and long-lasting with a battery life to complement this functionality. So you can use IR sensor. So if a person is wearing a card holder with IR blaster, with IR transmitter, you have 100% in-room accuracy for the rooms that you have Portal Beam small sensor attached to a ceiling. It will see this IR and report it back via BLE of existing infrastructure to your cloud, saying that your asset has been located in this room, 100% certainty. You have occupancy, that is not collecting people's data. You don't care about who the person is. You just care if you have 5 people or less than 5 people in a meeting room that has capacity of up to 5 people. If you have more, then you will have an alert, or you can have an alert. Yeah. If you have less, it's still green. You can add like one more person to the meeting. Lastly, you have sensors that can do air quality, humidity, temperature of a building on a per room basis, assuming that you have a sensor in a room. And one more thing, if you have a Wi-Fi vendor, your Wi-Fi infrastructure that is not equipped with programmable BLE radios that can be used as the gateways for the BLE IoT devices like the Portal Beam, you can still leverage your very simple gateway that is called the Portal Lite that you can plug into the wall and use it as a BLE to Wi-Fi gateway. That is also not only cheap and very practical and user-friendly form factor. It's just like a plug you plug into the wall, but it also adds beaconing capabilities, right? So it can increase the accuracy of location tracking using BLE. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now
that is correct. I think that you're doing the pitch better than I do. So I think everything you've said, spot on. I think 2 additional items to just add the entire logic of how we at the end think of that offering is in rooms, right? That it's an indoor based offering for buildings where the room is the entity of logical consumption, the same way as GPS is the a street address is the logical way of consuming data, right? And we think in the buildings, in the verticals that we focus, it's the room. Yeah. And for rooms, the value proposition is 1 device per room, not more, not less. That gets you that. We price everything as a service per room. So even if you add 2 to a room, the pricing will significantly drop because we want to go in and say, okay, how many rooms do we have to think of? And right, like also, I mean, the device comes on a as a service pricing, and depending if you're partner and customer, list price is $250 per annum. That includes hardware, service, software, everything. There's not a single additional cost line item on that end. And the portal lights that you referred to, right, just to put it in references, $50.
Yeah, that's very good. And that's
no
the list
subscription
price, right?
attached. So just plug it in and then you have it.
Yeah, it's a very, very good offering, to be absolutely honest. And I like the simplicity. I think everyone appreciates it, that you don't have 10 different licensing levels and weird names for it. It's just simple as a service, $250, and it's yours to use for a year, which is amazing. How about if you have open spaces in carpeted offices, entire floor is open. You have, I don't know, a 50 by 50 meters or 100 by 100 meters open space filled with desks and booths. Would that be still practical to use portal beams in?
So short answer is yes, 100%. That is what it's been designed for. We see, especially when we go in the carpeted offices, we have 3 categories of use cases that we serve. It's room occupancy, which is typically a meeting room. It's hot desking, understanding, right? Areas of seating arrangements. They typically come in kind of 6 desks together, and then open space. We have a lot of these.
And you would use the thermal cameras for the hot desking occupancy.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the deployment reference is, if you want to solve for hot desking, you put 1 above each of the seating arrangements, right? That can be anything between, let's say, 4, 6, 8, typically 6 desks. And then when it comes to, I think, any other space, which is right, like hallways or anything like that, then, installing 1 on the hallway or 2 next to each other creates sort of the possibility to do, people counting in and out, a type of use cases as well.
Oh, Philip, it also has the smoke detection and CO2 detection, right? So you can use your portal beams instead of a safety sensors. Like, I don't know, I have some Google sensors here at home. They are similar form factor to your device, and I'm just using them for CO2 and smoke alerts. Can I use your devices instead?
So I think the CO2 sensor is something that we add and sell as an optional sensor, starting at specific MOQ numbers. The O2 sensor is something that the device has by default for every single unit that we ship. And I think when it comes to the question of replacing, I want to be very honest and straightforward. We have learned that this entire market, right, goes beyond just the actual hardware, but that there are specific, right, workflows attached to it. It's a very OT-driven topic. And I think we are only, given that we've added these capabilities right now, exploring, right, like the full depth of, okay, what and how does a modern service offering need to look like in order to address that? So I'll give you the short answer. Technically, yes. Practically,
not yet.
It's a process.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. Yeah. And one more question about the glass offices. Let's say at our office at Natsilik, we have tons of meeting rooms and booths and collaboration spaces, but we don't have walls per se. Okay, in the open space, it's all glass. Would that work for room occupancy?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so does the IR go through the thick glass?
So you now have a combination of IR and the thermal camera, and we can tell through the camera module if there is a glass, a barrier that's essentially changing the heat patterns, at least for how the camera picks it up. And thus, we can very clearly, combining those two data sources, tell if somebody is on the one side or on the other side.
That's slick. And for all this information to see the heat signatures and sensors readings and BLE, beacons, RSSIs and stuff, you can use your Contact.io cloud application, or you can feed all this information that comes, all the information that comes from the portal beam, from the RF side and sensor side, to any other third party using APIs. The only thing that you can't feed to the third party is the heat signatures from the cameras. Is that correct statement?
So the statement is the Contact, or like the portal beam, is a cloud-enabled and cloud-defined product. So the value proposition of some of the things that I've just explained to you is not by default embedded into the device, but it's the question of we collect the data and the Contact.io cloud and the location engine computing them sort of correctly, and then providing that output in form of an API or in a dashboard. But the product and the service offering and the value proposition only works because of the pre-processing and the processing that we do on the cloud. There's a whole bunch of, especially when it comes to images, it's sometimes for people much easier to grasp than when we talk about location engine algorithms and all the different things that you can do there. But especially if you now start feeding images into a location engine, anything that touches images in the world that we are operating in is by default kind of a machine learning type of exercise. As we have data sets, we label, we annotate pictures, we feed it into the algorithm, then we take a real picture, we see, was it correctly labeled, or was it a coffee cup that was suddenly detected as a human, right? Like all these beautiful things that go hand in hand with at the end building predictable or prediction machines that tell correctly if there's a human or not. All of that is happening in the Kio cloud, and then we feed at the end an event stream into application that is not what you've seen typically in the industry. Your raw RSSI, here's everything data dump, which is something that another location-aware company would probably be very interested in, because they're in the business of computing then the data from scratch. But we believe, and I believe here from a Contact.io perspective, the two main barriers that have been blocking that industry and specific verticals to each become billion-dollar markets. Yeah, because obviously the technology can enable a whole bunch of things. The first is the cost and the complexity of getting the data, and that is cost of infrastructure, total cost per ownership, per square footage, per device. You break it down to the entity of your choice, but it's just been extremely complex. And the second thing, what was also not quite there, is a non-location aware system getting a raw RSSI stream can't really do anything with that. If I have a Salesforce platform, if I have an SAP, then I'm not hiring now a location expert team that starts getting into the gist of, what do I do with this raw RSSI data? What do I do with this? No, there's a business software that has already specific workflows, and we want to make it as easy as possible to just feed events that have location dependency into these platforms.
That makes perfect sense, right? So you just compute everything because you know your system best, and you know how to calculate everything based on the camera sensors, readings of your devices, and accompanying underlying Wi-Fi BLE infrastructure. You can also use that to increase the accuracy, right, of locating of your assets, and you just feed that back via API in the form of an event with information like this meeting room has 5 people, and these are the calculated XY coordinates, if relevant, for that particular assets in this room.
100%. That's the philosophy, and then also I think it's that's the only way you can at the end really scale. These things need to be simple, self-explanatory, and when we if you were to kind of visit one of the planning sessions on the software a team at Contact.io, right? We think of role models. We don't look into the existing RTLS industry. We don't hire from the existing RTLS industry, so to say. We think of how the product should work, function, and be consumed more of companies like Slack, Twilio, Gmail, who all have managed to create self-service type of offerings that were very, very easy for individuals to start consuming, right, and to start working and to start validating, and doing that in a no touch, low touch type of engagement. And then from that, there is essentially enterprise accounts that kind of can rise and that find that very appealing as well, and that don't want to continue to have the the Outlook experience, but they prefer the Gmail type of approach, and then they move, and that's sort of the philosophy, because that enables a much broader market where at the end people can get started with that technology that 10 years ago couldn't, because the entrance barriers being way too high, both on the technology side, but also how you make sense of the data.
And it must be slick and simple to use, otherwise it won't be used. So if a product requires excessive training, it's gonna fail in most cases. So it must be simple.
Exactly.
Okay.
So for that purpose, we in the first week of April, we start shipping high volume starter kits for the Portal Beam. They are designed for that self-service onboarding experience, to figure everything out yourself. You guys obviously get one already prior to that, but just to wrap up the story, you purchase that in an e-commerce workflow on the Contact.io side. You don't have to talk to us. You can pay with credit card. I think it's a one-time price, $339 or something like that. So it still falls in the range of affordable. What you get with that is a Portal Beam, a Portal Light, a badge, everything to kind of test what we've just discussed, right? Like to understand that value proposition for yourself. We encourage everyone to do that. And then how it's most of the time, right? Some, maybe just have a little use case, and that's great. And then they can continue using it without, being bothered by salespeople calling them and saying, how many you want, what's the deal. But then on the other hand side, there are also significant kind of enterprise type of customers that then need planning help with, okay, now I have that Cisco infrastructure already in place. I'm thinking rolling this out to 100 locations. Please help me design. Is the system capable of doing it, etc.
Okay, Philipp. So before jumping into the integration with third-party vendors like Cisco and the others, I have one more question about how your BLE radios that you have mentioned at the beginning of the podcast can either transmit or receive data. How do they complement the existing BLE radios from, I don't know, let's say the Cisco access points, the BLE omnidirectional radios? My question will be about if your devices, they listen to the BLE beacons, they will be useful to increase the accuracy of the assets tracked, right? So if you have an asset with attached BLE beacon that transmits data every second or every minute, Contact.io Portal Beam will be able to pick that up together with Cisco Access Point or Cisco Access Points, and you will be able to use data received from any BLE radio, either Cisco or Contact.io, to make the computation of a location of that particular BLE tag attached to an asset more accurate. How does it work in the other direction? Do you use BLE transmitting capabilities to increase the accuracy of a location of a blue dot in a mobile application, or do you just use BLE transmitting capabilities to talk back to your cloud via an existing underlying BLE technology?
So interrupt me in case I didn't understand the question correctly. From a value proposition point of view, we don't focus on the mobile phone as a piece of infrastructure that's relevant to the location computation, right? Because in the first generation of BLE beacon, right? Like the mobile phone was most of the time acting as the gateway, picking up the beacon and then transferring it back to the cloud. We believe that that belongs into the infrastructure, into the networking layer. The Portal Beam is improving, and now let's talk about, let's for a second exclude infrared, let's exclude the camera as a technical capability. Let's just look at it as a BLE device, yeah. And then there are essentially two things that we do. First is automated, or what the Contactor Cloud does, which is an automated fingerprinting. So we know the location of all the portal beams. We know the location of all the access points. We can have the portal beam both being in a listening and in a broadcasting mode, and it's there's a time logic to it. And with that, we can collect, and that's the most important piece, right? The timestamps via the existing BLE infrastructure of the portal beam, and given it's a fixed location, we know exactly where it is, and we get all the RSSI values. Nevertheless, we have a way that we can automatically in the cloud continue to fingerprint, and that happens a couple of times in a given interval that we have found out to be kind of most effective. And those any type of BLE device that is later on moving on the ground with a specific RSSI type of profile, right? We can detect much more accurately, because we're not just relying on that first-hand RSSI data that was picked up by the access point, but we can combine it with the data that we have collected and put in reference of with the portal beam, and all of that happens automatically. There is a second concept, and now let's just stay sort of technically, that the portal beam also supports, and the Contactor firmware also supports, which nevertheless has certain limitations, which is the reverse concept of the device, the moving device, opening its BLE radio to listen for a reference beacon that can be the portal beam, given that we have one in each room, right? It acts as an anchor point to any type of device that wants to listen to it. And then the moving device, the badge or the asset tag, after having listened to it, closing the BLE radio again, and then moving into broadcasting mode and pushing that data back to the access point, right? I think it's very important to understand it's always the access point or the gateway that at the end receives the data and forwards it. And the other, two type of capabilities, they come with, the devices and the satellite or the portal beam that is being put in each room. We support both. We prefer the first, because once you go into that notion that I've just explained, and you have a small tag operating on a coin cell battery, and you tell that tag to open its BLE radio to listen periodically, we are now entering into the concept of a battery drainage. And we the beauty of BLE is, in comparison, right, to Wi-Fi, that you can have very long-lasting tags. 5 to 8 years for most of the use cases.
And compare it to Wi-Fi tags,
norm.
Please. How much time could we expect from a Wi-Fi tag in comparison?
Yeah, we are obviously not in the in the Wi-Fi tag business, so you always have to take that with a grain of salt, as I'm making obviously a marketing statement right now. But I think it's fair to say that the power consumption is 3 to 6 times, or is in the magnitude of 3 to 6 times better. So what we see when we look at some of the legacy vendors in, for example, healthcare RTLS, which was essentially the only real market that had pain points so sufficiently high that they were able to pay for $80, $100 tags, and infrastructure that was costing probably 4 times as much as the Contactor stack costs. Here, I think it's typically right, like a tech can last a year or two, and then there is exchange services, and this goes with very specific ping rates. And on our end, we always say if you do a tech-to-tech comparison, a Contacto BLE tag or any BLE tag comes typically at 1/4 to 1/5 of the cost of a Wi-Fi tag, and has 3 times the power consumption, or 3 times the power
efficiency,
and those the battery length.
Yeah, and potentially they're also smaller, right? The BLE tags, and more popular, so more form factors.
Yeah, and they're open because you can combine them from any vendor. It's the mix and match, right, value proposition, which has been a shortcoming in the Wi-Fi and also in the UWB type of market, given that you need to own kind of the end-to-end stack, at least until today, in order to deliver value.
Okay.
That's not the case with.
So that's all great. I think we've nailed the technicalities of how Contacts.io Portal Beam Portal Lite work. We've discussed your portfolio of available BLE tags. Let's spend like 1 more minute talking about the form factors of tags you guys have available, because you have quite a few on your website. So would you like to quickly talk us through of what's available from a BLE tags perspective to complement, or actually any tags perspective that complement your portfolio?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not just BLE tags that you have, is it?
So I think, again, closing that point on the BLE. So we believe at the end in BLE as the connectivity backhaul. I think that's there to stay, and I think it will become, or is already, the enterprise kind of default standard for IoT or location. Now, we believe that BLE devices will carry a whole bunch of other technologies from infrared, UWB, camera, whatever, in order to then do specific things that specific technology helps them to do. And then we use the output of that to bring it back to the network using the BLE connectivity as the backhaul. So all the devices that you see have at least a BLE radio, but they're not limited to it. And I think now, speaking in terms of form factor, let's put the vertical lens on. For healthcare, we have 3 types of devices. One that you can put to assets, mobile medical assets, most of the cases, right? Beds, IV pumps, ultrasound machines, wheelchairs, everything that's a mobile medical asset. There's a specific tag for it. Then one category that goes on nurses, doctors. It's essentially in the format of a badge, but a badge holder. So every organization has their existing ISO door access control cards. We have delivered a super slick and slim badge holder where you can slick and swipe your existing ID card in, and then you have something to hold, and that's a BLE device that, again, has 5 years of battery lifetime, comes with 2 buttons, so you can have staff to rest type of nurse call use cases enabled with it, and obviously do location as well. Yeah. Then the third is for anybody visiting or for patients. So a very small, super low cost wristband. Those are the kind of the 3 that we currently have. And what you'll see very soon is we have a calibrated temperature module that can do and comply with a whole bunch of the healthcare and monitoring standards that come to environmental monitoring, which is not a location use case, but it falls into the category of IoT. And with the stack that we have, it's just a question of adding it, and we want to kind of disrupt that industry as well with a simple, affordable, easy to use technology stack. That's healthcare, and now you can go into any of the other markets. You will find a bit more ruggedized tags. You will find lanyards that you can use for events or for visitors in corporate office environments. You find additional anchor beacons for very simple kind of wayfinding and temperature monitoring use cases. And in total, those are the devices that we do, and we try actually to keep them, very, very limited. And then there is, dozens of devices of partners that are Contacto compatible, because we've given them, parts of our firmware so that they can tune into the same technology stack that we have.
That's quite a lot of different form factors. We've seen most of them firsthand. You can't even tell that they're tags, like the lanyards. They're just like, you
don't see it.
No, yeah. You don't even see that. It's a stuff that you put around your neck as you normally would with a card. And there is like a bead at the end that looks just like a hook for your card or whatever you call this stuff. And that's just it. That's the BLE tag. And we've seen these card holders. You can't even see there is any tag embedded in it until you flip it over, where you have these two buttons, like one yellow and one red, I think it was. And you can program these buttons. That's crazy good. It opens up entire different use cases for your RTLS application, like you said, the panic buttons and stuff. So it's great to have a programmability in your tags. And also we are aware that you have capabilities to program multiple tags at the same time wirelessly straight from a cloud at another cost of subscription for your tags to have this functionality. But it's an amazing way of managing your tags, so you don't have to do it, on a tag by tag basis, connect, plug in anything. You just do it wirelessly in a batches of, hundreds or thousands of tags. That saves you tons of time, I guess. Do you have anything else to add about the tags before we move to the vendor integration part?
Let's get in there.
Okie dokie. So we have Contact.io, we have your tags, we have your infrastructure, we have Contact.io Portal Beam, Portal Lite, card holders, we have everything. We can use that without any other vendor, but what if we have the vendor that we want to use it with, like Cisco, and we want to complement what we already have with Contact.io? How does it work when it comes to integration, and what vendors do you support?
So, very good question. I think I'll give you the commercial and I give you the technical answer to it. Cisco has launched, right, I think already 2 years back, the DNA Spaces Cloud, that is the business outcome cloud for enabling, right, all the additional things that you can do atop of your typical Wi-Fi. And as part of that, they have, together with the Wi-Fi 6 ready APs, a BLE gateway that is supported, or that Contacto can tune into, right, and kind of consume the data back. We have a native integration with the Firehose API coming from Cisco DNA Spaces Cloud into our environment. The Contacto cloud offering is directly integrated with DNA Spaces. This is a product integration. It's not a project, one by one. We do it with the customer. No, this is out of the box, one-click type of a cloud-to-cloud activation. It is validated and proven by the field. So with all of the stuff that you have, and assume you have Wi-Fi 6 APs from Cisco, and assuming that you have enabled the DNA Spaces Cloud with the right license that allows you to consume BLE data, what you can do is you can take the Portal Lite from Contact.io, you can put it in a box, you can ship it back to Contact.io, will take it back free of charge. You can take the exact same devices that we have shipped to you. Typically, when we ship you devices, you have a little order ID, which is a unique code that comes with the box on a little flyer, and that allows you to manage these devices within the Contact.io cloud. You can take that exact same flyer, the exact same code. You can go to DNA spaces, you enter it there. You don't go to the Contact.io cloud, you don't claim them over there. You go to DNA spaces, you do it there. And then you can have your AP, the moment you've been doing this, talk to the devices, configure them, change their settings, etc. And the beauty on the commercial side is you take the Contact.io global price list, you get rid of the device management, you get rid of the Portal Lite, and your TCO is dropping significantly because we don't charge you for these items.
That's so sleek. So how does it, one question technically, how does it work? Where is data computed? So you have your Contact.io sensors, you have Cisco Wi-Fi 6 APs with built-in BLE radios and DNA spaces with all the subscriptions and licenses. Where is the data computed? Like all the sensors data, where does it go to? Does it go to Contact.io or does it go to Cisco DNA spaces? How about the BLE location data, Contact.io or DNA spaces? What is the flow of the information from both Cisco APs and Contact.io sensors when they complement each other?
Yeah, so all the data goes directly from the devices to Cisco and to DNA spaces. And the device management happens within DNA spaces in the Cisco cloud. The location computation of BLE happens within Cisco DNA spaces cloud. And then there is the firehose that can be fed into any different end party application. And for the purpose of sticking to the example, that then feeds into the Contact.io cloud. And there are, for some specific devices, and the Portal Beam is truly an exception to that, because for the rest, you can just go and play out of the box, given that the Portal Beam has specific, we've mentioned earlier, kind of cloud computational machine learning capabilities that we need to compute in the cloud. We then use the Cisco DNA Spaces stack to pass them through the cloud. We finalize it there, and then you have your dashboard.
I see. Okay, so most of the data, when it comes to the location and stuff, it's being consumed directly from DNA Spaces. DNA Spaces does all the computation, but some data, like the camera stuff, it will go through Cisco AP to the cloud, to Contact.io, and then all the computation will be done there for the data that can be consumed in DNA Spaces. Is that correct? We've lost your audio. You're on mute, Philip.
Yeah, I think for the sake of simplicity for this discussion, let's exclude the Portal Beam. And anything that is a Contact.io BLE device can get computed, managed, controlled, calculated the position within DNA Spaces, so that the Contact.io cloud or any other cloud or any other system can directly consume that information from Cisco.
Okay, so is it a fair statement then that we don't need Contact.io cloud at all with Portal Beam, even for the occupancy from the hit cameras and IR?
No, everything I've just said is 100% true for every single device Contact.io has, except the Portal Beam.
There we go.
There is no way to provide you those beautiful outputs without having a 10-people team that is computing, annotating pictures, and doing all of that. I think in terms of integration, nevertheless, given that the Contact.io cloud is directly integrated, if you want to consume the data from the Portal Beam, you have to tune into that event stream that is provided by the Contact.io cloud, but natively supported through Cisco.
Okay, and that makes sense. So I don't think I have any other architectural questions. Matt, do you have any more questions about tags, architecture, flows of data?
No, I just think that the listeners will be looking forward to a follow-up podcast that we do with you, Philip, or a video that you're going to send us of seeing this in action, because it sounds incredible. And I think it will be very nice for people actually to be able to see it. So we'll either follow up with a video demo of us together, or you'll be able to send us a video of it actually live working in a situation that we can show everyone.
Yeah, or maybe, I don't know, it's like we haven't decided yet. Maybe we can do another a short-ish podcast where we show the integration, step by step, how to do it, what to do, what works where, what do you configure on Contact.io side, what do you configure on DNA Spaces side. I don't know, we will see how we're going to tackle that. But I'm looking forward to myself to the next discussion, really, because you've answered quite a lot of questions we had on our list. And I'm sure that if we have these questions, some other people might have them in their heads too. So for me, it was extremely informative. It was really nice. Thank you very much, Philipp, for answering all that. So lastly, anything else that you would like to add to the discussion before we close it up?
No, I think we've covered a lot of the things actually in very technical depth. I'm not an initial engineer by education, so I think for anything, any listeners have actually the follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to kind of add the team, CTO and Chief Revenue Officer for anything that is either more commercial or more technical. I feel overall, we are right now, if you were to visit our office, right, like extremely kind of excited about, what's ahead with 2021 and 2022, because we really feel we have the things together to make a change to that industry. And I think that philosophy that is embedded in our culture, right, and thinking, okay, simple, fair, affordable, open, right, flexible, all these kind of terms, it's long overdue that they come to this industry. And then if you combine that with kind of a cutting edge innovation that actually allows you to do things that you weren't capable of doing before, then putting those two things together with a bit of serendipity, I think will turn into good things.
It feels very
so
fresh.
Anybody who feels intrigued by that approach, very free to ping me up, and we'll happy to add you to the list.
You, Philipp, what's the best way?
What do you mean?
I said, how do people get in contact with you? What's the best way, if people have listened to this, what's the best way to reach out and get in contact with?
You can just send me a personal email. I will reply in response to every single email, and then kind of put you in contact with the right folks on our team to make that happen. And the email is very easy. It's Philipp, PHILIPP, at contact, contact.io. And I'm sure you guys can add it to the
Philipp with double P at contact, so it's K and not C.io. Okay.
Yep.
And guys, thank you for doing all these products. It's a fresh thing on the market. I don't feel that anyone has done anything similar before. I mean, like targeting the carpeted offices, not only, but you can do tons of stuff in the office space with the RTLS. It wasn't the industry target before. Integration with existing vendors is mind-blowing, and the form factors and the amount of functionality packed into the small, beautiful sensors, it's just mind-bending. So we are all looking forward to using it more, and thank you very much for everyone's time. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Philipp, and let's stay in touch.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.